Now, 8 candidates all trying to make a name for themselves in the first debate of the Republican presidential primary last night in Wisconsin.
Our country is in decline. This decline is not inevitable. It's a choice. We need to send Joe Biden back to his basement and reverse American decline.
For a long time, we have professional politicians in the Republican Party who have been running from something. Now is our moment to start running to something.
I know a lot better than you do. You've never done it like you've never done anything to try to advance the interests of this government except to put yourself forward as a candidate tonight.
Okay, so it was spirited, to say the least, even with the GOP frontrunner absent. Joining us this morning to recap debate highlights and who came out ahead are political analysts Basil Smikle and Dan Cassino. So good to see both of you.
Good morning.
Okay, so obviously former President Trump not on the stage, right? So somebody was looking for a breakout moment, and I feel like most of them on that stage tried to have that moment. Basil, let me begin with you first. If you had to choose a winner here, who was it?
Yeah, I like to think about it in terms of who helped themselves the most or who hurt themselves. And I think Nikki Haley did the most to advance her candidacy. People, I think voters knew her before, but on that stage, the only woman on that stage, she capitalized on that in a couple of instances. But I think just the poise and the breadth of knowledge, particularly coming from being ambassador to the UN, I do think helped her a lot. So I think she advanced her cause the most. I don't know if DeSantis did the same, but I don't think he hurt himself necessarily. And Ramaswamy, a lot of energy. And I think I actually don't think he did any favors for himself in terms of looking presidential. Yeah. But if he wanted to be Trump's vice president, he did a good job last night.
Yeah, Dan.
Yeah, so Ramaswamy, I think, was the breakout in that he was very aggressive. He was talking to the moderator, he was talking to the candidates, he was getting into fights. He was definitely the Trumpiest of the candidates in his presentation. The problem is if you're a Republican, if you want a Trumpy candidate, you've got Donald Trump right there. So why do you need him? I think also Christie actually acquitted himself very, very well. He was on the attack, especially against Ramaswamy. And so I think
his ChatGPT line. After
well, and Ramaswamy, of course, was stealing a bunch of lines from Barack Obama in 2012. I'm just a skinny guy with a funny name, and then actually stole a bunch of Ron DeSantis' lines from that leaked memo where we saw what DeSantis' attacks were going to be, and Ramaswamy just took those attacks and used them himself. So DeSantis, I think, really was the loser here more than anybody else, because he was playing on defense. He was refusing to commit to answers. He didn't want to talk about certain things. Didn't want to talk about climate change. Didn't want to talk about Ukraine. And that's fine if you're the front runner. And he's front runner among these guys, but he's still 40 points behind. So he's got to be aggressive, and he just didn't want to do it.
Yeah, Donald Trump Jr. came out calling him a deer in headlights, and he was relatively quiet for the first hour of that debate.
Yeah, there's an interesting point about Christie, because I do wonder about his tactic. Like he's good for it's sort of that Northeast Republican mode, and he definitely sounded like and wanted to be the Republican that can win in a blue state. I do wonder if that's effective for the voters in Iowa, because they're really supportive of Donald Trump, and they want to. There are a lot that are looking for somebody else, but they still kind of like the Trumpist kind of approach. So it's going to be interesting, because what I think he's doing is playing more to New Hampshire. Independents can vote in New Hampshire, and I think he's playing more to that ground, which I think is an important point, because if Trump wins both Iowa and New Hampshire, it's game over. But if somebody can actually win New Hampshire, or one of those states, I think it resets the conversation a bit.
Okay. Well, and then there were the folks on the outskirts. There was the North Dakota governor and Asa Hutchinson, who were on the outskirts. They didn't seem like they made any noise. So what's happening next with them?
Well, look, so they're actually have real trouble. The next debate in a month, September 27th, you actually have to get at 3% in the polls. This one's only 1%. Those guys are not at 3% yet. So we've got 8 candidates here. We're looking probably having 4 candidates, maybe 5 at that next debate. The whole idea is to try and start winnowing things down.
What about Mike Pence? Because he actually he's usually reserved, and he was not only on the defense, but he was playing offense as well.
Very tough role for him to play, in part because he needs to create some distance from Donald Trump. The problem is he's going to be asked about everything that Donald Trump has done to sort of defend the record, so to speak. So it's a really tricky situation for him to be in. So many Trump voters don't like him. They actually consider him a traitor in many ways. And so, you know, the question is which audience, which Republican audience is he appealing to? He often came across as the grown man in the room,
Yeah.
the sort of grandfatherish kind of figure to sort of slow everybody down. If you remember, people were very quiet when he spoke.
Yes.
So he does command a certain level of.
He's quoting the Bible.
Yeah, right. He commands a certain level of respect. I just think that, you know, where Republican voters are today in the primary, I think they've gotten past him and are either, again, if you're looking for a Trump-esque person, why not just go with the original, as you said? But I don't think he presented a clear alternative to Donald Trump.
Yeah, but you really saw that in his interaction with Ramaswamy. And then Christie coming to his defense also.
Interestingly enough.
Yeah.
The biggest moment for Pence in this was when he did get everyone else on stage to say, yes, you did the right thing by not voting to.
And he made sure they came back to it because a lot of them avoided the question, and he said, I want to know what everybody thinks.
And then
pushed DeSantis to answer that.
And DeSantis saying, oh, I don't have a beef with him, which is kind of like skirting around the question.
You know, while all this was going on, of course, there was the former president having his sit-down interview with Tucker Carlson on X, the platform formerly known as Twitter. It did some big numbers last night. So when you look at the two juxtaposed here, was it the right move not to do the debate for the former president?
As a strategist, if I were a Republican strategist, I would say absolutely. You don't want to be there and have it be a referendum on you, even though it sort of was. You don't want to have it be a situation where they're all attacking you and you have to be on the defensive because that just brings you down to their level. They have a lot more to lose than you do if I'm talking to Donald Trump. So I think it was the right thing to do. The problem is that if his numbers start to slip, somebody else starts to rise in polls, he's going to have to engage at some point.
President Trump's superpower has always been that he sucks all the air out of the room. You can't talk about anyone other than former President Trump because he says a lot of stuff that's, you know, wild. Like last night or during that talk with Tucker Carlson, they were spending a lot of time talking about, was Jeffrey Epstein murdered? Like, okay, those are headlines. The problem former President Trump has is this morning we are not talking about former President Trump. We are talking about these other candidates. Now, they're still behind the polls, but if we start talking about other people, former President Trump starts to decline.
Around 4 p.m., we're going to be talking about former President Trump.
Exactly.
It's happening in Georgia, so it's a whole cycle.
Well, one debate down. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming in.
Right.
Yeah, the second GOP